Ciao Roberto.
Ciao Anand.
Today my guest is Roberto Roberti. He's an associate professor at VU Amsterdam in the Netherlands. He has a lot of contributions in the field of combinatorial optimization applied to transportation and logistics. He published many important papers in journals such as Operations Research, quite a few actually, Management Science, Transportation Science, Informed General Computing, Transportation Research Parts B and C, European Journal of Operation Research, and so on. He also is an associate editor for Transportation Science. So Roberto, thank you very much. Grazie mille for being here. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for your invitation. It's a real pleasure, and I also want to thank you for this initiative. I think it's very nice, especially in these days of Corona where networking is difficult. I think it's a really nice initiative, and I watched many of the interviews that you have done so far, and so thanks a lot.
No, thank
Obrigado.
you. De nada. That was nice. Thanks. So why don't you start telling me what's the deal with your name, Roberto Roberti?
Okay. That's a question I get pretty often. Well, actually, my parents liked the sound of the name, and especially my mom liked the meaning of the name. I think that Roberto is originally a German name, and I think that the meaning is something like somebody who shines because of his own light, something like that. So my mom liked it, and yeah, that's why they call me Roberto. I have to say it's good and bad at the same time, because if I do something nice, people remember, but the problem is that when I do something bad, then people do remember very easily. So, well, it's good and bad, but I enjoyed it. I like it.
Yeah, it sounds pretty cool, I must say. So you told me the other day you were from Rimini, correct?
Yeah, indeed.
So,
yeah.
How was life there?
Oh, very nice. It's a city on the eastern coast of Italy, northeast, and it's a touristic place. So it's well known for the beach, for discos. So yeah, when I was a teenager, I had quite some fun. I have to say, I liked it.
Right. Any other memories from that period? Any other hobbies?
Hobby? Well, I'm short. I'm not so tall, but my main hobby has always been basketball. I've always enjoyed it. I've been always very bad at it, but I've always enjoyed watching basketball games and also supporting the team of my city and so on. Also playing basketball on the beach. It was. I still like it.
You mean the Italian basketball league?
Yeah, also, and of course NBA. I mean, I like it a lot. So.
Okay. Do you remember Oscar Schmidt?
Yeah, of course. I think he's still the player who scored the most points in the Italian league.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think so. Right. Yeah, he's in a basketball Hall of Fame. Yeah. So.
Brazil.
Yeah. No. In the American one, in fact. That famous one. He has a very nice speech. In case you're interested. Yeah, I like basketball quite a lot. I mean, not as I used to follow in the late '90s or mid '90s. All the Chicago Bulls and Michael Jordan era. I was very into that, I must confess.
Yeah.
You studied computer science, didn't you?
Yeah, I studied computer science in Bologna. When I started was 2001. It was the first year that there was the new system, the 3+2, so the bachelor program 3 years and then the master program 2 years. I started in 2001 because I have always liked coding and so on. My parents bought me my first computer when I was 8. I think it was 1990. That was the present for Christmas. It was a Commodore 64, very old computer. I've always enjoyed programming, so that's why it was easy to pick computer science as my university study. I did 3 years there. I took the first course in operations research. The professor was Aristide Mingozzi, but I didn't get top grade actually. It was a good grade, but not the top grade. And so I decided to do my bachelor thesis on parallel computing. And I defended my bachelor thesis in December 2004. And then after that, I said, well, let's have a break. I had a sort of sabbatical year, and I went to the US. My English back then was non-existent, so I said, well, let's go for a trip and study English a bit. And I stayed there for a year. And I was in Boston because, to go back to basketball, I've always supported the Boston Celtics. So I went there also because of that. And then I came back after that year, and I started my master program in 2006, and I finished it in 2008, still in computer science.
Great. Larry Bird is one of my favorite players, from Boston Celtics. Yeah, he's very clever, and he may not be athletic compared to the other players, but I admire a lot the way that he acted in the court. But was it just like that to say, I'll go to Boston, but something had to be arranged. You have to find money. And what did you do in US to survive?
Basically I had this desire to learn English much better, because when I went there, my English skills were really bad. I could barely speak. I could barely say a few words, I have to say. And then I talked to my dad, and he said, I have this desire. What do you think? He said, okay, no problem. Just follow your dream. Go there. So he supported me, and I spent almost a year there in the US. I was in this small college. It's a language school close to Boston College. I spent a few months just studying English. And in that year, actually, I didn't read any book about computer science and so on. But I have to say, I was going through the curricula of the different courses of the master program that I would have applied for when I would come back. And there was this course that was really fascinating to me. That is combinatorial optimization. That was the first course that I would have done in the master program, and Aristide Mingozzi again was the professor there, was the teacher. So the only book that I read about computer science and related stuff that year was the purple and the purple and the pink book of Woolsey on
yeah.
So really nice book. I enjoyed it a lot. And then when I came back, then of course I read that book more carefully, and other books, of course.
We all read that book. Yeah, it was for a period. I think it was the reference for integer programming, and very important book. Did you have the chance to attend any Boston Celtics game?
No, unfortunately I didn't. That was a pity, but I couldn't.
Right. So when you left to the US, were you already sure that you were interested in trying masters, or that idea came when you were there?
No, I was 100% sure. I just wanted to have a year off to do something else. I was too fascinated by this combinatorial optimization course that I would have taken. So I really wanted to do it. Also because in the master program in Bologna back then, there were many electives to choose from. So I think I took something like 5 courses in OR, graph theory, and related stuff. So I took all the courses that I could. And it was an easy decision. I really wanted to do that.
Okay. And how was the process of choosing the advisor or the advisors?
For my master thesis, you mean?
Yes.
Oh, that was easy because I enjoyed the courses with Aristide a lot. So the combinatorial optimization courses I was mentioning, but also other courses. And then when I was in my last semester of the master program, I had only one course left. That was graph theory. I think it was the name of the course. And when I showed up for the first lecture, I was the only student in the class. So Aristide showed up and said, "Well, where are the students?" I said, "Well, here it is. That's just me." And then we said, "Well, anyway, I would have liked to do the thesis with you, and I would like you to be my advisor. So what can we do?" Yeah, I said, "Yeah, don't worry, I have a plan." And so he gave the course basically in his office, and I have spent a lot of hours there in his office. And the lectures were, it would come up with a topic and say, "Well, this is an algorithm developed for that topic. Go home and code it." And so the whole course was about that. Then at some point, Arista said, "Well, okay, now it's time to do something more serious." Sure, let's do it. And then he said, "Well, there is this nice problem that is called the vehicle routing problem with time windows." Of course, I was not aware of that problem. And then Arista said, why don't we do something about this?" "Well, whatever you want, I'm going to code it." And then I started my master thesis on the VRP with time windows, and I coded a pretty inefficient, I would have to say, branch and price. No, it was not even a branch and price. It was just a column generation with the enumeration of the routes in the gap in the end to find an optimal solution. And, that was my master thesis, and I defended it in March 2008. So the choice of the supervisor was easy. I liked OR so much, and Aristide is such a great teacher that it was very easy to ask him to be my supervisor.
Yeah, I think we have a lot in common in terms of dates. I started my bachelor's in 2001. My master's I started in 2006 and finished in February 2008. And then I started my PhD in 2008 and finished March 2012. I think you finished at a similar period, maybe. So
I defended the master thesis a month before you because you said April 2008, right?
No, my master's I finished in February 2008.
Okay. So I was a month late because I defended it in March 2008, and then I defended my PhD thesis in April 2012.
And I defended it on March 5th, 2012. So I think we have our careers were going in parallel in a very similar period, and that's nice. Yeah. Well, so I assume that when you finished the masters, you didn't have any doubts in your mind that you were going to do PhD. Is that correct?
Actually, not really, because I enjoyed working on my master thesis so much that a month before the defense of my master thesis, I had a couple of interviews with consulting companies. I also had a couple of offers. But then Aristide said, "Well, why don't you do a PhD?" I said, "Well, sure, let's do it." And I applied for positions as PhD student in 3 different departments at the University of Bologna. And then I picked the department of, it was called DAYS back then, or the Department of Engineering, basically, where also Paolo Tot was, and he's still there. And Alberto Caprara, Andrea Lodi, Silvano Martello, and all the other great colleagues, Daniele Vigo, of course, all the other great colleagues were there. So then I did a PhD at the Department of Engineering in Bologna.
Okay. You still kept working with VRPs and still the VRPTW?
Yeah. Basically, my first year of the PhD was all about the VRP with time windows. Then we submitted the paper on the VRP with time windows, and then the second and the third year of the PhD, I worked on other problems: the multi-trick VRP, the 2-echelon VRP, the asymmetric TSP, the TSP with time windows. So other problems. But the first year was all about the VRP with time windows.
When did you realize that that particular problem was very important, and there's a lot of competition, and back then things were really busy? When did you realize, okay, I must do a really serious algorithm or something here, otherwise I won't be able to move forward, let's say? When that strike to you?
I think I realized that a few years later, after I published with Aristide and Roberto the paper on the VRP with time windows. Back then it was just fun. The topic of my thesis, I enjoyed it so much that for me it was just all about doing the best that we could. And I realized that that is a classical, well-known problem only a few years later. Back then I was really inexperienced, so I was just in the hands of my supervisors, and whatever problem they would come up with, I would say, okay, I like it, because I like VRP problems. So,
if you see it right now, would we have still taken the same path if you knew that this is really hard and there's a lot of competition going on?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I don't regret what I have done. I enjoyed it a lot. So.
No, right now, okay, now it's easy. But I mean, if you had in mind that could be really risky, would you have done that still?
I would say yes, but also because when I was a PhD student, I couldn't pick the right topic for my thesis. So of course I had to rely on the advices and the knowledge of the people I was working with. So yeah, I mean, if I would still be a PhD student, I would still rely on the advices of my PhD supervisor. So yes.
Okay. Do you remember some of the ideas you tried but didn't work out?
On the VRP with time windows?
In general, in your thesis in general. I mean, during the PhD.
Oh, I would say most of the ideas did not work out. But not just the ideas themselves, also the implementation. I think I have coded some of the ideas like 10 or 12 times, because of course, if you don't code them well, you cannot even prove that they are good ideas. I cannot remember a specific idea that I've tried that didn't work, to be honest, also on the VRP with time windows and so on. But I've tried many, and most of them don't work. I think that 90% of the ideas and the code that I write, they're not good ideas, but that's what research is about, I think. So.
Right. And do you remember the first time you presented a paper in a conference?
Oh, yes. That was August or September. I think it was August 2008. So it was 4 or 5 months after I defended my master thesis and before I started the PhD. And it was the annual Italian Conference of Operations Researchers in Ischia.
Airo, right?
Yeah, it was Airo, yes. And I presented my master thesis, so this non-efficient column generation method for the VRP with time windows. It was quite an experience. I enjoyed it a lot, really enjoyed it a lot.
Were you nervous or you were very confident? Do you remember?
Well, for sure I was a bit nervous, but I was so excited about the fact that I had the opportunity to present my work and my master thesis to really smart people that I just enjoyed it. And so yeah, I was a bit nervous, but after the first 2 minutes of the talk, everything was quite smooth, went quite smoothly. So
yeah,
it was okay.
Yeah, right, good. Can you name the journals that you published your papers from the thesis, just out of curiosity?
I think there were 2 papers in operations research, 2 papers in Inforce Journal on computing, a paper in the first issue of the Eurojournal on Transportation and Logistics. And then we have written a survey in eJOR and another paper on a sort of framework for VRPs in computational management science. I think these were the papers that ended up in my master thesis, in my PhD thesis, sorry.
Is that 6 papers then?
It could be something like that.
So you had 2 operations research from your thesis. That's remarkable.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think it was the VRP with time windows and a 2-echelon VRP.
Yeah. That's very, very impressive. You know, we're talking about your PhD period, and we can't help but to mention about NG route relaxation. Can you tell me the story behind that?
Oh, yeah, the NG route. Yeah, that was the idea that we published in the paper in OR in 2011. Well, in the end, it's a simple idea, I would say, but now it looks like it works well. And well, during my PhD, we used to have a lot of discussions with Aristide, with Roberto, Baldacci, and so on. I used to spend a lot of time in Aristide's office in front of the whiteboard thinking about, okay, what can we do, writing down formulations and so on. And one day we thought about, well, what could be another route relaxation we can use apart from the well-known Q path relaxation, the K path, and so on. And we said, well, maybe we could just do something like this, what ended up being the NG route. And I said, okay, I'm gonna go home and code it. And it took me a couple of days. The implementation was really bad, really slow, but anyway, it would allow me to have some bounds to show to Aristide and Roberto. And I said, well, look, there is this problem. I think it was RC 204 with 50 customers of the Solomon instances. Mm-hmm. If I remember correctly, the optimal solution cost is 444.2. And with the NG route, I think we could get the optimal solution. And I told them, and they were like, Aristide said immediately, okay, come on, there has to be something wrong in the implementation. I said, well, okay, that's well possible. I said, well, go home and try again. Okay, then I recoded it. And I went back to him the next day, and I said, well, look, I coded it again, and I get the same bound, so it should be correct. I mean, I can check again, but I think it is correct. And then Aristide said, okay, I cannot believe that. And he said, well, I'm going to code it myself. Okay, fine. So he went home, he coded it in Fortran. I was coding it in C. And then the day after, or maybe the next week, he said, well, I get the same bound, so you may be right. And yeah, so that's a little story behind the NG route. Actually, the first name that we gave to the NG route was not NG route, but the first name that we thought about was cluster path. Don't ask me why. It's just because you kind of keep a cluster of the different customers that you visit along the path. So we thought, well, maybe cluster path would be nice. And then we said, well, maybe NG sounds better because you keep the neighbors and so on. So then we call them NG route.
Yeah, that was my next question. But I remember you told me once that you had that idea in the train. Can you confirm that?
Yes. Yeah, something like that. Because I used to commute to go to Cesena, where Aristide and Roberto had their office. And I was thinking, well, man, what can we do? I was a bit, I don't want to say depressed, but I was a bit down in that period because we couldn't get good results and we couldn't improve our results. And then I had this idea and I talked about it with the other guys, and then I coded it. It was a good idea. Yeah, it worked.
Yeah, and ended up being published in OR, right?
Yeah, it was published in OR after a rejection in mathematical programming, I have to say.
Oh.
The first version of the paper was submitted to, we submitted it to mathematical programming, but we got rejected pretty badly. Okay, I have to say that the paper could have been written much better. Then we rewrote the paper and then we submitted to OR. It was a much improved version of the paper. We also followed some of the advices of the referees from MathProg to improve it. And in the end, it went well in OR. So,
what was the reason for the rejection? Do you remember?
I think that they claimed that the contribution of the paper was not enough. Maybe it was our fault. We just didn't emphasize it enough, or I don't know. But the main reason was there is not enough contribution to be published in mathematical programming. So then we said, well, maybe the contribution is there, but we were not good enough, and we should rewrite the paper. So that's why we have rewritten the paper significantly.
Yeah, you mentioned that you were feeling down, more or less, during that period. Can you share, what action did you take to keep yourself motivated and to overcome the difficulties from that period?
Oh, that's a good question, Anand. Well, I don't really have a recipe for that. But when I was a PhD student, after a while, I kind of realized that research is like this. I mean, you have your ups and downs. There are some times where you are very happy, you get a nice paper accepted in a good journal. But to get to that point, you just have to fail. And I think it's perfectly fine if 80 or 90% of the ideas that we try don't work. It's just what it is. And since then I started viewing things in research in a slightly different way. So now I try not to be too excited when things go well, when I get a nice referee reports and so on, and I try not to be too down when things don't go well, when one of my papers gets rejected. I just say, well, that's what it is, and to succeed, I think you have to go through failure. That's what it is.
Yeah, right. So, can you describe more the technical contributions of your thesis apart from the NG route relaxation? You mentioned you work in the multi-trip, in the two-echelon, but do you remember what actually were the main contributions from those works?
Well, it was well known already, but for sure, I mean, using set partitioning formulations, or some set partitioning formulations with side constraints. For sure, that was the key ingredient of the algorithms that we developed. Also showing that for quite a few problems, a column generation approach works best. And then different ideas. I mean, having different root relaxations, using multiple dual solutions to price out columns and to reduce the set of columns that you have in a column generation setting. And this is where I think that the main contributions, and of course the computational side, that we could close some open instances of the different problems and improve upon the results that back then were the state of the art.
Right. Can you describe your relationship with your advisors?
Sure. That's one of the things that made my PhD an incredible journey, I have to say. I really enjoyed it. So I have to say I've been very lucky because I had formally two supervisors, Paolo Tot and Ariste Mingotti, plus I'm formally a co-supervisor, Roberto Baldacci. And I've been lucky because all of them wanted to spend time with me to teach me something. They wanted to really to guide me through my PhD research, and that was certainly a great thing in my PhD. And I have to say I've learned different things from them. From Roberto Baldacci, I've certainly learned how to code things well. Spent quite some time with me. Well, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? So really, the technical stuff, I've learned a lot. From Paolo, I've learned, I would say, mainly how to write papers, because he used to give me a lot of advices. So when I would give him a draft of the paper, I suppose 10 pages, what he would do was to read everything very in detail, and then to put an X close to a line where there was something to change. So now when I would give him the very first draft of one of my papers, I was happy if it would give me back a printout of the paper with less than 200 X's. That was my goal.
Okay.
I think I barely made it. Most of the times I had 250 or 300 X's, so things changed and so on. I've learned a lot about it, and I have to say, from a human viewpoint, what struck me the most about Paul is that he talks to the dean the way he talks to a PhD student or a bachelor student. There is no difference. I mean, he highly respects everybody, and to me, that's an important thing. And then, of course, from Aristide, he was, let's say, my daily supervisor, and he spent a lot of time with me, teaching me things, and we had this nice relationship where there was mutual respect, of course, but also a little bit of competition, I have to say. So I've always had the feeling that I was like the young guy in the room, trying to show the big name in the field, that I could do something and I could sit at the table with him and contribute. And I always had this impression, even though I've never had him, I always had this impression that he wanted to show that, well, come on, this young kid cannot have better ideas than I do. So he really wanted to do his best to show me that it was the big name, because I was still a young kid. So there was this kind of mutual respect and competition that pushed me a lot. And another important thing that I remember from Aristide is that he's a passionate guy. So when you talk to him and you tell him, well, I have this problem, what can we do about it? Do you have ideas? It's like you're challenging him. So it happened quite often that we met like in the morning, and I say, yeah, okay, don't worry, let's talk about this tomorrow. And then he would go home and spend a few hours thinking about the problem. And then the day after, he would come back with 10, 12, 15 pages of notes, different formulations, different ideas, and so on. So yeah, I have to say that whenever we started a new paper on a new topic, I've always had this luxury and pleasure to have someone who would come up immediately with brilliant ideas, and that was a great starting point. So I owe these guys a lot. There is no doubt.
That's fantastic. I mean, hearing you saying that you challenged him at some point in your impression it's remarkable in a way, right? When you feel that you're pushing someone which is really important and well known, and the guy gives you attention despite all his fame and all that, I think that's very motivating, and I suppose that is very crucial also when we develop and implement advanced exact algorithms. Who does not remember when you code your first column generation algorithm?
Yeah.
It's a tough path, don't you think?
Yeah, it is. No, for sure, having a supervisor who wants to spend time with you and teach you something, and a supervisor who cares about you, I think it's just crucial. It's crucial for a PhD student, and I do believe actually that many PhD students don't have that luck. I would say. Otherwise, many PhD students would do much better than they do, but they're not just in the best possible position to contribute to the literature. Also because now I'm a bit more experienced, I'm a bit older, and so I'm getting closer to the point where maybe I can supervise a PhD student and so on. And of course, when you get older, you care about it. You need to teach, you need to do administration, you need to publish papers and so on. So sometimes I think we tend to forget how important it is for a PhD student to feel supported, to spend time with PhD students and to give them ideas, also to support them from a psychological viewpoint, in the sense that they're also just chit-chatting about different stuff, not just about formulation and so on, and to get to know each other from at a personal level. I think it's important. I think it's also important to adjust the style of supervision to the PhD student you talk to. That's crucial. I have to say, I had the pleasure to have all of this in my PhD studies, so I've been very lucky.
Yeah, I fully agree with what you say, especially with the idea of adjusting yourself to try to take the best of each individual student, and of course talking about other stuff that's not actually related to the work can improve the relationship, and I think that's very nice. I remember when the NG route relaxation came out, and it was really a buzz. And I remember that Eduardo Shoa sent me to route in his place in 2011, and that's where we met. I must confess that he was pretty mad at me because I missed your presentation because I had to do checkout. I'm really sorry for that. He was not very happy anyway, but I didn't have a choice. I had to solve some bureaucracy and so on. And it was, we met, and it was very nice. I think you had a little bit more of hair at that time. I'm not sure.
Yeah, more, but not so many.
Yeah, but I'm reaching you. No worry, don't worry. So we're closing the gap.
Okay.
Yeah, and did you have any idea that the NG route idea would stand? I mean, it stood the test of time, and it has been part of many column generation based algorithms for VRPs. When you coded that, when you published in first place, did you were you aware that this is a very nice idea and it was going to be keep on being re-implemented by the other important guys in our field?
No, to be honest, I had no clue about it. I was just working with Arit, Roberto, Paolo, and so on. I was just trying to come up with reasonable ideas and do my best. But I mean, back then I had no clue about the impact of the ideas or how popular working the VRP with time windows was. I had no clue. I was just trying to do my best.
Right. You published a lot during your PhD. Can you estimate on average how much time it took for each paper?
Oh, it's difficult to say. Well, when you are the main author of the paper, in the sense that when you are the guy who codes the algorithm and so on, I think it's fair to assume that to have a paper in a top journal, it could easily take a year of work. Maybe not full time, but I think it's quite natural. At least for me now, my standard is this, considering that I also have to teach and do other things. If I can manage to write the code of a paper that gets published in a top journal within a year, I'm quite happy.
But in that case, you had to work in more than one paper simultaneously, right?
Yeah, there were also revisions and so on, but my teaching duties during my PhD were very limited, so I had plenty of time to work on the code and writing and so on. And like I said, I had a lot of support, so I was not just alone coding and doing everything. Actually, the workload was shared with the other co-authors. That helped me a lot, of course.
Yes, sometimes it's not like that, right? Sometimes there are some advisors that just put everything on the back of the student, and that's not fair, I believe. But according to what you said, you've been fortunate to have support, and that's very nice.
Yeah.
I also remember another story. After we finished the PhD, there was that I think there was a VeRoLog conference in UK. I think in Southampton, organized by Maria and all that. And then there was the VeRoLog Prize. So I remember that I tried, knowing that I didn't have a chance because there was like you and Thibaut Vidal. You guys defended in the same year as I did. And I remember that Thibaut was visiting me here. I think it was 2013 or late 2012. I'm not sure. And he was here, literally here. And we had this conversation about that prize. And I said, look, Thibaut, I think you have a chance. But at the time, of course, I was fully aware about the work you've done and the impact of the energy route relaxation and so on. But I told him that, okay, I think Roberto also is a very strong candidate. And he said, yeah, I know. So, and in the end, you ended up chairing that. And I thought it was a fantastic and very fair solution, because you guys did astonishing amount of work. Thibaut more towards the development of heuristic algorithms, and you in terms of exact algorithms. So I think it's safe to say that you are maybe one of the most successful researcher that arose in the last 10 years, maybe. So how do you feel about that?
Well, I appreciate your words. I don't think I'm at that level in the sense that I just try to do my best. That's it, and that I don't know who does a better job or whatever. I just try to do my best, and I don't care that much about the rest. But of course, I mean, the VeRoLog Prize was a big honor. I remember when I received the email from Ángel Corberán, who was the chair of the jury. Mm-hmm. It was a real pleasure, and also knowing that I would share it with Thibaut. I mean, Thibaut is definitely a brilliant researcher, so it was an honor too. And I was especially happy for all the people who helped me, Aristide and the others, because I mean, they spent so much time with me trying to teach me something that at least I felt like I could kind of give something back, or I could show that I have learned something and that I have given my tiny contribution to the literature. So that was the main reason I was happy about the prize, I have to say.
I think you're being humble, but I think at the same time that it's I think a pretty good attitude to face it, right? Maybe not make a big deal out of it. But yeah, in my opinion, at least, you're one of the great guys around. You know, after finish the PhD, actually, I want to ask when you realized you wanted to follow the academic path. It was during the PhD, after the PhD?
Probably it was before I started the PhD. I've always enjoyed teaching, and for me, doing research was something fantastic. So when I had the opportunity, I enjoyed my time when I was a PhD student. So I've never thought about leaving academia, to be honest. I enjoyed it too much, and basically, I think I get paid for my hobby, because in the end, this is my hobby, and I get paid, and I have the luxury to wake up in the morning and not think, oh, I have to go to work. How boring is that? Okay, when it's time to go home? I've never felt that feeling. So I've never thought about leaving academia. For me, academia is the only job that I want to do, also because it's just a hobby. And so for me, doing a postdoc after my PhD was an obvious choice.
And you had the privilege to work with the late Alberto Cabrera. Can you comment on that, please?
Yeah, I defended my PhD thesis in April 2012, but I started my postdoc a couple of months earlier. And during that short make span, until Alberto passed away, was April 2012, I think towards the end of April. I had the opportunity to work with him. We have written a paper together also with Paolo Tot and Valentina Cacchiani. on a timetabling problem for course scheduling, and yeah, it was a real privilege. The thing that I remember the most about Alberto is how humble he was. I mean, it was definitely a brilliant researcher. Right? No one can question that. But it was really humble. It was an approachable person for the colleagues, for the students. You know, in Italy there is this attitude for some professors to feel like, well, I'm the big name. Who are you as a student? And Alberto was not like that. He would treat students in a very humble way, very very simple way, and that was remarkable. And he was really passionate about things, about different problems, coming up with ideas, and so on. So that was, unfortunately, we worked together only for a few months, but I have to say that was definitely inspiring. One day we were in Paolo's office, and so I asked Alberto, well, what do you think? Do you think that I have what it takes to have a career in academia? And then he told me, yeah, of course, I think you do. I think you should go for it. And that fueled my passion, that boosted my motivation to stay in academia, because you know, when a big guy, a big name tells you that yes, you can do it, go ahead, that's a big thing that really motivates you.
For sure. Yeah, it was. I remember after his tragic passing, I sent you an email because I knew you were doing the postdoc with him and all that, and it was tough. I never met him, but I heard so many good things about him, and you know, I wish I just could have met him. But anyway, I think you work in the minimal latency problem too during that period.
Yeah.
And you asked me for upper bounds. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah, I do.
And then I had to ask Marcos Melo, who was the guy who coded that, and then he kindly provided them, and I forwarded them to you. And when you got that, you said that you owe me a lunch, and I'm still waiting for that.
Yeah, I know. I'm aware of that. You're right, Anand.
You had the opportunity in 2019 in VeRoLog, but I was expecting and nothing happened, so I would like to kindly remember. It's a gentle reminder.
Okay.
I still want that lunch. Okay.
Noted. Sure. When this Corona thing is away, then we will do it. I will keep it in mind. I owe you 2 lunches now.
Okay then. Of course I'm joking, but it would be great, right, to have lunch together at some point after all this period that we're experiencing. But one cannot keep on doing postdoc forever. I mean, there are people that ended up, unfortunately, in that direction. But in your case, I think you found a position 2 years after finishing your PhD. Is that correct?
Yes, that was 2014. I applied for quite a few positions as assistant professor. Got rejected in most of them, actually all but one. And but I got an offer from DTU in Denmark. It was not a tenure track; it was just a temporary position as an assistant professor. So I moved there, spent a couple of years, and then I moved to the VU, to Amsterdam, where I had my tenure track as an assistant professor. So then I moved to Amsterdam in 2016.
Okay, so you lived in Denmark for a couple of years. Did you pick up any Danish?
Oh no, I'm pretty bad at languages, to be honest. So my Danish was non-existent. I think I picked up something like 10 words, or maybe 20 to say many. And then, but also my Dutch is not much better than my Danish. I think I know 20 words, something like that. I know it's a shame after 5 years, but yeah. The problem is that in those countries you can get along very well if you can just speak English. So you're not really motivated to learn the local language, even though to be integrated you should. But yeah. so far I get along quite well with English. So I'm not studying Dutch, and I didn't study Danish when I was there.
Yeah, they can manage English, and also once I was visiting Amsterdam, and the taxi driver in 2012, more or less, there was no Uber back then. And he knew about operations research. He asked me what I was doing. I was said, no, I work with this and that optimization. I tried to explain him, and then he said, oh, this is operations research, right? I said, wow, quite impressive. And yes, so I think you can manage pretty well there in Amsterdam with English and other topics too, maybe.
Yeah, that's remarkable. That's remarkable. But I have to say, in the Netherlands, actually, OR is way more popular than in other countries. For example, I'm not aware of a master program or a bachelor program in OR in Italy, for example, or in other countries. In the Netherlands, there are quite a few bachelor studies in econometrics and OR, and also master studies in just OR. So it's a popular subject.
Right. Were you aware that finding a permanent position, a tenure position in Italy was hard, and you were kind of forced to look after positions elsewhere? Was it like okay for you, or you felt that I'm leaving my country, and how did this affect you?
Yeah, I mean, getting a position in Italy has always been difficult in the last 20 years, and unfortunately, this has discouraged many PhD students or many potential PhD students to do a PhD and so on, because there are not many positions, there is not much money for that. So I had to leave, but I was aware of that actually when I started my PhD. So no one ever promised me anything, so I was aware of that. And of course, when you leave your country, you're not too happy. At least I was not so happy, but it was my decision. I was thankful to those who gave me the opportunity to have a position abroad, first at DTU and then at the VU. That's already quite something. So no hard feelings. There is no need to have hard feelings. It's just what it is. I could have applied for a position in a company. I decided not to do it, so I took what I was offered. So that's fine.
Right. So you were working in Amsterdam. Can you describe more or less what is your routine? Of course, now it's very crazy, but prior to all this pandemic stuff, how do you organize your time in terms of teaching and doing research, supervision, reviewing papers, and etc.?
Yeah, so before this Corona crisis, basically every day was different. So at the VU we have courses that last 6 or 4 weeks, depending on the period. And I mainly teach in period 4, which means February, March. So February, March, they are mainly teaching months for me. So I spend most of the time on teaching, and January is about preparing the courses. And I also teach in other periods, but a bit less. So when I'm not busy with teaching, then of course there is supervision of master students, pre-master students, bachelor students, and PhD students. But every day is different. I just plan the day and the week depending on what I have to do. So I don't really have a specific routine that I follow. I just follow the flow, see the emails that I have in the inbox, see the tasks that I have, and I just try to make the most out of it.
Yeah, from the supervision perspective, how do you pick up a topic for a student? That's something that's very crucial in the life of the student. So how do you do that?
Oh, that's quite a responsibility, I have to say, and I'm afraid I'm not so good at that, because I really feel the pressure that you have to pick the right topic, especially for PhD thesis and for PhD students. So what I usually try to do is I kind of do some experiments with master students, trying some topics, even some risky topics and so on, knowing that you're not supposed to beat the literature and to beat the state of the art to write a master thesis. And then once I have an idea, if some ideas may work, then I propose that to PhD students or to other colleagues, and I try to work on a paper. And quite often I try to code a sort of prototype at the beginning. At least I quickly code a formulation myself to see if it could work or not. I look at the linear relaxation, at how C++ Groby behave, and so I try to limit the risk for the co-authors and for the PhD students. But you never know up front where you end up. So yeah. That's what I try to do.
Yeah, so you code, keep on coding. That's great. Sometimes some colleagues of ours, they don't find the time to do it, maybe to administrative work or heavy amount of teaching. But it's great to hear that you still keep coding. And Roberto, I think we reached a stage where, at least for VRPs, that the exact algorithms became highly complex and very complicated. And even if you want to contribute on something, especially for the classical problems, you may have to do an entire PhD to really understand the underlying features and details until you get to the stage that you can contribute. So what are your views on this?
I agree with you, Anand. I think that the developments and the announcements that have been proposed in the last 10, 15 years to solve VRPs to optimality have been quite amazing. Now with this solver that Eduardo and the others developed, of course, it's super efficient, so it's difficult to not just to beat them, but just also to get close to their results. So yeah, of course, starting a PhD on exact methods for vehicle routing problems is more and more challenging. But I think that if there is some good cooperation with the supervisor, if the supervisor knows the real papers to read and where the best ideas are, it's still possible to do something. Of course, I would warn the PhD student from the beginning, saying, well, look, it's a risky topic. You may not end up having 5 papers by the end of the PhD because it takes time to learn how to code and to pick up the ideas and to digest them and to improve them. But it's still possible. Of course, the gap is becoming smaller and smaller to publish in top journals and to come up with great ideas. But I think it's still possible to do something.
Yes, I see that there's a lot of hype of artificial intelligence and machine learning stuff. And how do you feel that can contribute to the improvement of integer programming or combinatorial optimization algorithms?
That's another good question. I must say that I'm not an expert in machine learning. Actually, I should say that I know close to nothing about machine learning. So I don't feel like I can share strong views on that. I can just share my impression. Well, about the hype, I fully agree with you. There is a lot of hype on machine learning, and in OR, we don't have that hype. There is no doubt about it. OR is not so sexy as machine learning for companies and so on. Well, we could look for the reasons for that. I think there is a fundamental difference between machine learning and OR. I tend to think that machine learning is more for making good predictions, and OR is more for making good decisions. So, yeah, difference between predictive analytics and prescriptive analytics. And I'm under the impression that in quite a few companies there is that machine learning is used also to make decisions, not just to make predictions. But if this happens, it's also our fault of we or our people, because maybe we're not able to sell what we do. For sure, I'm not. To practitioners, to companies, and so on. So I agree that at the moment machine learning is kind of eating up most of the money and for sure most of the hype that there is around AI in a broad sense. Then how can machine learning help OR or the other way around? Again, even here I can just share an impression because I'm not an expert in machine learning. When it comes to exact methods for OR, I think that an obvious way that machine learning can help speed up exact algorithms is when you make a heuristic decision and you can improve upon that decision. So for example, if you have a column generation, which column should you add to the master problem? Or when you add cuts, which cuts should you add? Or if you have multiple algorithms to generate routes, which one should you use? Or if you do branching, which variable should you branch on? I think machine learning can help us in making these decisions within an algorithm. But I cannot tell you more than that because I'm not an expert in machine learning. The impression I have is that in OR, or let's say one of the reasons machine learning may have all this hype that OR does not have could be because in the OR field we're not good at selling what we do to companies, and especially I have the impression that when we face a real-life problem, we talk to practitioners, we talk to a company, they present us a problem, maybe a VRP or any other problem, doesn't matter. It's very rich. So in terms of algorithms, what can you do? Maybe you just develop a greedy algorithm, a very simple algorithm. And if you want to publish a paper like that with an application with a very rich problem, and you just have a greedy heuristic, just to say, then you know that you're not going to be able to publish that in a top journal, because traditionally what we look for in a paper in a top journal is a complicated algorithm with some methodological contributions, some theoretical contributions, and so on, which is certainly important. It's certainly fair, but then I think we end up having this gap between what we would need to do to sell what we do to a company and to turn that into a paper, and what it takes to write a paper and have it published in a top journal. I think there is this gap, and I think that contributes to the fact that OR is not so sexy as maybe machine learning, or to the fact that we find it difficult to sell what we do to companies. So that could be a reason, but again, I don't have an answer to that. And I'm not an expert in machine learning, so I cannot make any bold statements about this.
Yeah, sure. But do you have any suggestion or ideas on where we can overcome this situation in terms of, publishing practical solutions that are not very complicated, but it may draw the attention of many people, even the society, in a really good journal? Or is it interesting maybe to introduce a journal for that? I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
That's not a good question. I don't really know, to be honest, because like I said, I think that traditionally what we look for in a top paper is a good methodological and theoretical contribution, and most of the times you cannot have it when you work on a real life rich problem and so on. But we cannot even say overnight, well, now this top journal is going to publish application papers and real life or algorithms on real life problems and so on. Because then I think it becomes quite difficult also to draw a line and say, well, now this is a top paper or this is an okay paper. And you also, when you want to advance in your career, of course, you need to publish in well-known top journals. And so So it's a dilemma. It's difficult to find an answer to that and a solution to that. I don't know.
Yeah, of course I don't know either. Just I think the reflection should be made within our community, and something has to be done. I suppose. Otherwise, maybe we're going to be, even struggling to get funding and visibility in the future if we don't take some action.
Yeah.
I know that some people are trying to embrace the advances of AI and machine learning, embedding in some combinatorial optimization algorithms, and I don't know. That's one option. The other option maybe would be, as we discussed now, to come up with some solution that tries to balance the complexity or the relevance of the contribution in terms of methodology and the application. As you said, sometimes the practical problem is really interesting, but you can't do much than a greedy algorithm, as you said. But then, nobody knows, nobody will end up knowing about that problem because it won't be published, at least in a very good journal. So I think there are some discussions that should be made, and let's hope things improve for the best in our field in this sense.
Yeah.
Right. Roberto, it was a great pleasure to have you here. Thank you very much for your time. Grazie mille. And I hope you had fun too.
Sure, I did. Thanks a lot, Hanan, for inviting me. It was a real pleasure to have this conversation with you, and also the process before the conversation. You're a really nice person. I enjoyed it, and I want to thank you again for having me and for this initiative, which is a really nice initiative. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. I really look forward to meeting you soon. Right? It's been tough for everyone, but hang on there. I know you had to cancel your wedding, sadly,
also.
Yeah, and I hope that everything turns out good and soon in your personal life as well, not only in your career. In the career, you're doing great. I may ask you for advice also to how to publish so many good papers in very, very good journals. You became an expert on that. And I wish you the best of luck in your research and your work. And see you soon. Bye.
Thanks a lot, Hanan. Ciao, and best of luck to you too.
Ciao.
Ciao.